book I wrote has been withdrawn from publication by my publisher a month after it was published because they've said I've contravened copyright and privacy laws. Now, if you're a Little Mix fan, and especially a Jade Thirlwall fan, you're going to want to hear this. So I need to add some context here. I'm a filmmaker and I wanted to tell my story about my struggles to try and make it in the film industry, which, as most people know, is very, very difficult to get into. So in 2007, I made a short film called Skin, which I wrote especially for Jade Thirlwall, who starred in that film aged 15. So yes, that Jade Thirlwall of Little Mix. This was a year before she first auditioned for the X Factor. So if we jump forward to the COVID pandemic, I was at a loose end and I decided to write my memoirs, which is primarily about my filmmaking journey, and it features the story of how I came to make the film with Jade. Now, she's the most famous person that I've worked with, although at the time she wasn't, so it was obviously going to be the selling point of the book. And I called it Jade and a Little Mix of My Films. And in it, I write about various people I've encountered, including some not so nice producers and all the many problems that I've had. In 2021, I got a book deal from book publishers Austin Macauley here in the UK. Now, they're a hybrid producer, which means you as the author pay them to publish your book. It's the same as a vanity press, except they're supposed to share the cost with the author. So in my email to them to try and get this deal, I mentioned Jade. So I'll read some of it here. I've written a memoir detailing the making of Skin, working with Jade Thirlwall and my attempts to work with her again, and the phone conversations that we had while she was on the X Factor, mixed in with my struggles as a filmmaker trying to break into the film industry. I also have a number of exclusive on-set, never-before-released photos of Jade from the film production. Right, it's also important to add that I included many photos in the book of Jade which were taken at the time of the film's production and intended to be used for publicity purposes, which means I hold the copyright to those photographs. So the photos were not sent to the publisher at the start, but in September 2023, 4 months before publication. With my contract, they sent me a letter that was attached in an email, and I just want to read a couple of excerpts from that. With your links to Little Mix and behind-the-scenes experience you possess, you are sure to attract a wide and varied audience with this piece. Then in the next paragraph it says, permission will need to be obtained from any persons mentioned in the book if their legal or familiar names are used. Alternatively, you may wish to change the names instead. Now, these statements are important, especially the second one about permissions, because this is what brought the compliance department to determine that I'd broken the rules. So on January the 5th, 2024, the book was published, and I had a profile page on their website where they also sold the book directly from, as well as across many platforms, including Amazon, Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, you name it, right? And they sent out reams of emails to me on how to help market the book on my social media, and encouraged me to put the book out into book fairs at my own cost nonetheless, which I did. I also enlisted at my own cost a PR company to help market the book, and they sent out a press release to a multitude of media outlets, radio stations, papers, magazines, etc. I was also encouraged to make a book trailer, which I did, and they also created their own version, and these were uploaded to social media sites. Then almost a month after the launch, I got an email from Austin Macaulay's compliance department. Bear in mind, this is 3 years down the line, and after I've paid £1,900 to them, and almost a month after release. So I'm going to read some of the email. We are writing in reference to the publishing contract you signed with us. We appreciate the effort you invested in your book, Jade and a Little Mix of My Films. It has come to our attention 3 years after I sent it to them that the content of your title contains images and information that may potentially infringe on copyright laws. Note the use of the word may potentially infringe. So perhaps they wanted to ask me if I have the copyright to the photographs, but they've already made up their mind that I don't. After thorough consideration and legal review, we've identified concerns that necessitate a crucial discussion. Oh, right, okay. So they want to talk to me about it, do they? Upon reviewing the manuscript, 3 years after they okayed it, it has become apparent that the story significantly revolves around Jade Thirlwell, and images of Miss Thirlwell have been included without obtaining necessary permissions. I'll come to that in a minute. This raises serious legal and ethical concerns, as it could potentially lead to complications and damage both your reputation as an author and our standing as a publisher. As per Clause 3 of our publishing contract, the author warrants that the work contains no libelous, defamatory or other unlawful material, and agrees to indemnify the publisher against any liability in this regard. Unfortunately, the current state of the book is in violation of these terms, and its publication could result in legal consequences. So why did they publish the book? Given these circumstances, we have withdrawn the title from publication with immediate effect. So what happened to the need for a crucial discussion? A few points to address here. So why did it take 3 years for them to come to this decision? Granted, the images weren't in the book from the outset, but were added about 4 months prior to the publication date, ample time for them to look at them. When I first contacted them, I mentioned having the photographs of Jade that I wanted to include in the book, so they were aware from the outset of the photographs, but they never asked to see them. And why was this decision made several weeks after the book had already been published? Where was their due diligence in this 3-year period? If the images contravened copyright laws and the book was to be withdrawn immediately, why was it still displayed on their website several weeks later with Jade's face emblazoned on it? An image they claim I can't use without Jade's permission, but it's okay for them to keep on their website for weeks. I may point out in fairness that in a letter emailed to me at the beginning of the process, it states that I will need to get permission from anyone mentioned in the book if their real name or given name is used, or alternatively change the names. Permission will need to be obtained from any persons mentioned in the book if their legal or familiar names are used. Alternatively, you may wish to change the names instead. This is something that they say that I have contravened in further emails, but in the same letter, it encourages me to use my links to Little Mix, namely Jade. Here we go. With your links to Little Mix and behind-the-scenes experience you possess, you are sure to attract a wide and varied audience with this piece. This flies in the face of everything they're saying in the email, telling me that they're withdrawing the book. It's become apparent that the story significantly revolves around Jade Thirlwell. Really? I told you this 3 years ago? On the one hand, in the letter, they're encouraging me to use my connections to Little Mix, but on the other hand, they're advising that I change real names. So how do I use my connections to Little Mix if I'm going to change the names? Then in the email, they act like they've just discovered what the book is about. It's all contradictory, absolutely contradictory. So I queried this permission statement several times directly in emails at the time, as I was sure I didn't need permission to write about a celebrity and therefore no need to change any names. Each time the query was ignored, I never got a reply, and I gave up asking, thinking, quite rightly, that I didn't need permission. And after all, this was the letter which I took to be advisory and not in my actual contract. In part 2 of this video, I'll tell you about the ineptitude of this publisher and let you know what is happening with my book.